Welcome to Decleated, a football podcast, with your hosts, Seamus
and John. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Decleated. Remember to turn on new episode notifications wherever you may be listening. And as always, you could follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at DecleatedPod to stay up to date on all things Decleated. And I have just been on the edge of my seat all day ready to record this episode because we're already less than a week away from the draft, and now it's our turn to put our stamp on it and make our predictions beforehand.
Perhaps the most highly anticipated day of the offseason for you and I.
Yep.
A big day, a momentous day for Decleated because it's the first of its kind, a unique inaugural episode for us.
Yeah. No, none of the usual, Giants, Packers, and rest of the NFL. So this is just mock draft. That's
Breaking the mold.
That's it. So I'm super pumped about it. That's it. I'm just super excited. I guess we should go through some of our intentions beforehand and like some of the expectations before we just jump right into it and start naming names.
For sure.
I know, obviously, it worked out so well that the Giants and the Packers are even and odd teams. So we figured we would alternate picks in the mock draft. You taking the odd teams, so you could get to pick for your Packers, and I'll get the even teams, so I get to pick for the Giants. And it'll be interesting. We haven't we've been doing a whole bunch of research this weekend. Leading up to us too, but getting our big boards for each of the teams that we're picking for,
figuring out team needs, and everything that goes along with developing a mock draft,
ranking our players. I feel like we're really in the war room right now. So
it's tough too because I feel like we typically rely on each other a little bit to I'll get some intel through your social media scrolling and just the things that you see, and you'll do the same, and we'll see some of the same stuff, we'll see some of the different stuff, and we'll talk about it, and that's where we end up with my final big board is definitely influenced by what you say, and I'm sure vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting because we've kind of kept things to ourselves as much as possible.
Yep.
Obviously the big things in quarterback and receiver we've discussed in the last couple months, honestly.
Yep.
But for the most part, we've tried to keep it under wraps. Even the last couple days, we've tried to, we've started conversations. Let's hold off.
Yeah, we gotta save it. I want to know what your plan is and stuff like that. So yeah, this is gonna be pretty authentic. Some of these reactions, I'm sure. I mean, there are certain picks where we know how it's gonna shake out more or less. But I'm sure, especially in the later rounds, where the later picks in the first round that really aren't on the front of everyone's mind, especially when you look at the mock drafts. Sometimes you just look at the top 10, the top 15.
Right, and then you look for your favorite team and you kind of scroll past the rest.
Yeah, but for the Packers, for instance, that'll be interesting to see who's even around at that point.
Yeah, 100%.
What they decide to do, or what you decide to do for them. So, I'm super pumped. I'm ready. I'm ready to jump into it whenever you are. I don't know if you have any other remarks to make before we start.
I don't think so. I did have one random thought this morning, though, that just, I guess it's an occupational hazard, if you will, of doing this draft. I was thinking about who's going to be around when the Packers come up and what I'm going to want to do, and, maybe they trade down. I don't know. I think there's a lot on the table. But something I was thinking is I'm probably going to end up being disappointed by the time we get to the Packers draft because I'm drafting the guys that I like.
Yeah.
And they're the guys who I want the Packers to take at 25. So when we're at 15, at 20, and there, is a team with a similar team need as the Packers, I may take the guy that I want the Packers to take.
Yep.
Because he's the guy I like the most. So it's a little backwards in that way, but it's fun. Like I said, it's a cost of doing business the way that we're doing this. So it's just going to be fun.
For sure. And I think that it kind of going along with what you're saying, the mentality while we're going through these picks are, it's going to be a good mix of what we've, seen, I guess, research-wise based on rumors that have come out and, just generally what scouts all over the place have been saying.
The consensus.
But also, putting our twist on it, if we some of the picks, we're looking at some of these, rankings before and I'm wow, I really don't agree with that from, just knowing some of these players and watching some of the film that we've watched and, I don't know how you can rank this guy above that guy. So there'll be some of those too, where it'll be fun to see how even between us, see how some of those players differ on our rankings and stuff like that. So.
Exactly. And we're going to try to be as objective as possible. Coincidentally enough, it works out that the entire NFC North has odd picks and the entire NFC East has even picks. So we will be picking for our division rivals. We will not be picking punters and kickers to fill their rosters in the first round. We'll be a little bit generous this time around.
Yeah.
And I think trade-wise, we're just going to see how it goes, see how we feel throughout. I think there's some teams on both of our lists that we have an idea that, maybe they'd be interested in trading up or trading down, and we'll just kind of see how it goes.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much all I could really think of our little preamble for this. Seamus, you are on the clock with the Chicago Bears pick. Maybe not the most difficult pick in the draft, I don't think, at least, but I say let's kick this sucker off. Yep.
I know. This is going to be a real laborious one. I think I'm going to use all 15 minutes on this. I don't know. It's going to be real tough. I'm still personally not sold on Caleb Williams, but it's just such a foregone conclusion at this point that I'm not going to mess the entire thing up and just for the sake of being different, going to pick somebody else. Yep. I'm going to take, with the Chicago Bears' first overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, Caleb Williams, the quarterback from USC.
All right, so here I am with Washington at the number 2 pick.
Which is debatably the number 1 overall pick because the world is your oyster here. Now, you're not pigeonholed one way or the other.
That is correct. And I've kind of battled with this one back and forth. I think the most glaring need, obviously, is quarterback. They've clearly cleared that quarterback room besides, like Marcus Mariota, who's going to be the veteran backup. I personally think that Drake May is the quarterback 2 in this draft. And just from what I've been hearing and all the, Cliff Kingsbury stuff, I think the media's done a good job of convincing me as well that Jaden Daniels is going to be the guy at number 2. Would I personally take him over Drake May? No. But I'm still going with the number 2 pick in the NFL Draft. The Washington Commanders select Jaden Daniels.
Wow.
From LSU.
Despite the recent reports that he may pull an Eli Manning and tell him he doesn't want to play in Washington.
I don't know. There's, I don't know how much I believe of that. I don't know how much is, just speculation trying to make things interesting
of course.
Just...
Right, it's whose agent's talking and whose coaches are talking. Yeah, exactly. You don't know where these rumors are coming from. It's that time of year. It's rumor central. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Yep.
And you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Now,
this is a big one.
That's very interesting because I certainly think that Jaden Daniels is the better quarterback of the two.
You do?
I do.
You have Jaden Daniels above Drake May.
Correct.
Wow.
There's something about those, the blue chip basketball schools that I just don't love quarterbacks from. Daniel Jones didn't set a great precedent a couple years ago. Mitch Trubisky doesn't set a great precedent from North Carolina. Sam Howell. Not that I'm fully out on Sam Howell yet, but I don't know. The track record isn't adding up for me.
Yep.
And also not that those 3 guys dictate how good of a player Drake May is going to be, but historically it just put a bad taste in my mouth. So personally, my preference there is Jaden Daniels. I don't know what the Patriots' preference is there. I also am inclined, if I'm the Elliott Wolf, to trade back here. I really have an itch to feel like I just need to continue to add weapons here. I don't know. I think the way that this fell, it makes me debate a couple things. It would make me debate Drake May, make me debate Marvin Harrison Jr., and it would make me debate a trade back.
The thing is, I just genuinely don't know what the Patriots are realistically doing. I mean, they've been throwing out stuff left and right, we could take a quarterback, we could take the best player on the board, we could trade back. So, they haven't been giving any fodder to anyone to try to, convince us of what they actually are thinking. However, I know, there are some teams down the line, I'm sure, that would be very interested in moving up if for a Drake May at that spot that are, maybe more so of a quarterback away than the Patriots might be, as they might, they need a whole roster, reshuffle here.
I think if you had asked me 24 hours ago, as I was going through some of this prep, what I was going to do here, it was one of 2 guys. It
Yeah.
was the opposite of whoever you took it to.
Okay.
That will not be the case. I also don't think that Denver has the draft capital to move up. I
Yep.
don't think that they want to sacrifice their entire future or whatever they have left of it
Got
to
it.
move up for one of these guys.
Yep.
Vegas, I could see it, but I think the fact that I don't love Drake May and I'm picking for Vegas makes me think that I don't really want to do that.
Yep. Yep.
And there's something about Minnesota that I feel like they're not going to do it either. I know that that's the popular thought process now that they have 11 and 23, but Buffalo, when they drafted Josh Allen a couple years ago, had a very similar situation, and they didn't trade all the way up to 3 to do it. So I feel like the Vikings are going to stand pat. I'm going to take Marvin Harrison Jr.
Wow.
I don't dislike Jacoby Brissett being my guy for this year while I build the rest of my team.
Wow. This is crazy. See, we're already off the script a little bit here.
We are.
I love it though.
And it's going to ruffle some feathers. And, I may even look back on Thursday night and go, what was I thinking? But that's what my gut is telling me at this moment.
Wow.
You're going to take a generational player. They haven't had a receiver like him since Randy Moss, potentially.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. And Jacoby Brissett has been solid in other places as backup. Cleveland and Indy, Miami. He can get it done. Just put some
Yeah.
guys around him.
All right. So now I have the Cardinals here, and
I know I just messed you up big
yes,
time here.
Yes, you did. However, this so obviously, just looking at the roster for the Cardinals, I mean, wide receiver jumps out as the biggest need for sure. But I mean, this is another team that could trade back here, and I don't know. I love Drake May, so I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum with that. So I could really see I'm just looking at the Giants or the Vikings who do have the capital to jump up. However, you are picking for the Vikings.
True, and it's not a no from me. I would discuss.
And the Arizona Cardinals have traded the 4th pick in the NFL draft and the 71st pick in the 2024 NFL draft for the 11th, the 23rd, and the 129th pick in this year's draft.
So the Arizona Cardinals give up the number 4 pick, and they get 2 additional firsts and a 5th. On the other hand, the Vikings move up in the first round to the number 4 overall pick, and they get a 3rd round pick as well.
Now you get to make the pick, so.
All right. This is interesting because I hadn't even considered this part of it. Now that I've traded for this pick, now I have to make the pick.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so interesting. Well, I guess there really is not a big pick to make here. It's really you're going to have the interesting part of this, where now you have 3 first-round picks, 2 of which you weren't expecting to have.
Yep.
All right. Well, we pretty much, when we did that deal, decided that the 4th overall pick was going to be Drake May, the quarterback from North Carolina.
Yep. And there you go. After you denounced him as a pick, you made the pick and got him on. Got another rookie quarterback into the NFC North. So, and here we go again. You're back to back now after doing that trade. So, let's see what the Chargers end up doing here, because I know they have a litany of needs. You were just listing off team needs, and we were kind of going through it before. So, a lot of different options you could go here.
It's very interesting because this is the one that really, I think, is a precarious position. Because the Patriots, to me, is if you're trading up with the Patriots, you're drafting a quarterback. That makes it a little bit easier to narrow down the options. However, 5, especially the way that this is played out, your top 3 guys are off the board. Mm-hmm. J.J. McCarthy is apparently the next guy. I don't see him as a top 10 pick. So I have trouble saying somebody's going to trade up here with the Chargers for a quarterback for J.J. McCarthy.
And I'm in the same boat as you, I think. I don't think I see J.J. McCarthy as that, highly rated, or, I also have trouble seeing that. So
the other issue is, we kind of talked about this the last couple days, is it's a prime spot to go get either Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze now, But what team is going to be willing to move up, and how much is that going to cost? Because it is a fairly deep wide receiver draft. So, are you going to hedge a little bit of your future? Do the Jets maybe move up from 10 to 5 here, which obviously wouldn't be a huge jump, but it would be significant.
Yeah.
Or do they wait it out and see if maybe they can get one of those two guys at 10? I don't know. There's other considerations there too, like does somebody move up from the back of the draft to go up and get one of these guys? I'm not too sure. I think it makes things a little complicated. And the fact that wide receiver is such a glaring need for the Chargers, I think for the sake of simplicity and just because it's like staring me right in the face, I think I'm going to go Malik Neighbors.
Wow. Malik Neighbors. You're not on the Harbaugh wants to pound the ball every 30 times a game kind of thing?
I think he probably does, but look, he's going to need a running back as well.
Yep.
The other thing is my top need for them besides wide receiver is corner and then center and then tackle. So like they've got to bolster the offensive line. Corey Linsley's great, but who knows what his status is going to be. So there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, go look at the Chargers depth chart. Go do yourself a favor. If you don't know, like there are weaknesses all over the board.
Yep.
So it ultimately doesn't matter who they take. I think they just need to get a strong starter regardless of where it is, and they need somebody. They need bodies in the receiver room. So I don't care if Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball 35 times a game.
Yep.
I don't know what running back he's going to do it with because, I mean, maybe it's like Baltimore 2.0 now with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. I don't know. I think you got to go with a guy who's potentially now the number one receiver in this draft, depending on who you speak to.
All right. So as a Giants fan, I think this is just like the absolute worst case scenario that could happen. I would be pulling hair out right now if this happened on Thursday. Malik Neighbors is who, assuming Drake May isn't there and we just got outbid for by the Vikings, which I think is very realistic in happening because they have more draft capital as we made that deal, we realized. And, I really don't think J.J. McCarthy is worth the 6th overall pick in the draft. I think he could be a really good quarterback, but I don't think he's as ready to like hit the ground running as people are saying. Like he has a lot of those intangibles and stuff that you like to see in a franchise quarterback, but I haven't seen it enough in game film to be like, that's a number one pick. And I mean, we've talked about it at length anyway. And so with that being said, you look to receiver, Marvin Harrison's gone. Malik Neighbors, who I hoped would be around because, I originally in my head thought that Joe Alt was going to be the pick at 5. So now I'm like kind of sweating here. But I do think I don't want to reach on that quarterback still. And you still have a really solid number one receiver option in that top tier wide receiver in Rome Odunze. So I am going to select with the 6th overall pick for the Giants, Rome Odunze from Washington.
Personally, from the outside looking in, love it. I love Rome Odunze. He's the guy out of these three that I've watched the most this year, just based on the college football games that I happen to watch.
Yep.
And I loved everything I saw.
He's a stud. It's really like a toss-up between who's that wide receiver too, I think.
Right, and I think all three of those guys have relatively high floors. It's just a matter of, okay, now who has the highest ceiling?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see.
I'd be salivating if I'm Tennessee right now.
You know what their number one need is?
Yep, tackle.
I'm going to not complicate things here. The number one team need for the Tennessee Titans is offensive tackle.
Yep.
And I'm going to go with the pretty much consensus, and if it's not, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so he gets the edge, Joe Alt.
Yep. I think that's the right pick. With the Falcons, I feel like they have they're another team with a decent amount of holes. But when I look at the top of the board, they really don't need offensive line help. And I feel like they could really use help on the defensive front. And they got some pretty good edge rushers at the top of this draft right now. I'm going to take, with the 8th pick, Dallas Turner, edge rusher from Alabama. I think that fills a big need. You get a solid pass rusher, and hopefully a guy who could be a cornerstone for your defense for a while.
I'm going to do something fun and fresh here that just came to me off the top of the dome here. I'm freestyling.
I saw you smirk a little bit. I'm very curious to see what this is.
I'm cooking something up We'll just see. It came to me because of the way that some of my mock drafts have worked out. So I'm going to trade the number 9 overall pick, the Chicago Bears. They've taken their quarterback of the future. I'm looking at who's here.
Wow.
I think, they could use a little help on the defensive front as well. Like you just said, there's some talent there, but I think it'll be there a little bit later as well.
Okay.
You know who I don't think is going to be there a little bit later? Brock Bowers.
Wow.
So, a team that could use a little more offensive firepower, the Indianapolis Colts,
Wow.
are going to trade up to the 9th overall pick from 15. Wow. So they're going to exchange the 15th overall pick this year, the 82nd overall pick this year, and a 6th round pick next year for the number 9 overall pick.
I absolutely love that because, I mean, you know how I feel about Anthony Richardson. If he comes back healthy and he's already got a solid offensive line, a good running back, and now you got Michael Pittman still, and you add Brock Bowers to that offense, that Shane Steichen offense. Oh, it sounds so fun. I love that.
And if Jelani Woods comes into his own a little bit, even if he's Mercedes Lewis,
I haven't seen anything like linking the Colts and I love this. I love this.
It's just fun. And I'll tell you what, I was sitting at the kitchen table earlier and I did my one last mock draft, and I said aloud, oh my God, I'm salivating at whatever just happened. However this worked out, I love it.
Yeah.
And that's what it was.
That's awesome.
In the mock draft, the Colts, or I should say Brock Bowers, fell to the Colts.
Yep.
And
that's crazy.
I had a feeling it wasn't going to happen here, so I just made it happen.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you did that because I have the Jets right now at 10, and I would have picked Brock Bowers at that spot.
Oh, and look how this works out.
Literally, that was awesome. That's why I thought it was even funnier too. Because I'm like right now, my eyes are lighting up at Brock Bowers. All right, so Jets time. Obviously, we want to get weapons for Aaron Rodgers. However, we got Rome Odunze and Brock Bowers, who I had at the top of the Jets want list, both gone already. However, with both of those guys being gone, the Jets, I know that they spent a lot of money in free agency, signing some of these veteran offensive linemen. A lot of these guys like Tyron Smith, I don't know how available he'll be if he gets hurt. I think you got to do some look to the future. I know you're trying to get this championship window and stack all this talent, but I'm looking right now at Fashanu from Penn State, and he debatably is the 1A, 1B with Joe Alt. Great pass protector. I'm going with him at 10. And look, if he doesn't start right away because you have these veterans, that's great. But then hopefully you have a blue chip, offensive tackle for years to come.
And look at how great the offensive lines were in Green Bay the last couple of years and still needed to shuffle guys in and out. So it's not a bad thing to have a surplus of offensive linemen.
For sure. Oh, I pick again.
You do.
I have 3 picks. I forgot these trades, man. This is going to be interesting to follow here. All right, so we got the Cardinals now. After we had them trading with the Vikings, they really need a wide receiver, but there's not. I mean, I don't know. Is it too early for a Brian Thomas from LSU?
The question then remains, too, they still have 23 and 27 at the back half.
That is also true. And they have other needs that they could fill, too. They have a lot of options here, actually.
This is an interesting exercise, though, doing this mock draft thing, because I had to remind myself as well. They don't need to draft their number 1 overall need with their first-round pick.
That's true.
Which is an interesting thing.
Yep. And I'm just looking at some of the guys at the top of the board, too, because sometimes just, most value, or, the best player available. And I'm looking here, as much as I wouldn't hate to see Brian Thomas get picked, maybe a little ahead of where he's projected to be, Jonathan Gannon, defensive head coach, I am going to take the first cornerback off the board in Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo.
Okay.
I feel like the Cardinals always have, good secondary players. I could see them going there. I was debating edge rusher, too. Jared Verse still on the board. But I'm going there. With that being said, maybe the dream scenario now for the Broncos at pick 12, as I have my third straight pick. I don't think you could have asked for anything better by not having to trade up, do anything crazy. It's the biggest need on the team because you have Jared Stidham starting at quarterback right now, and I think this is the kind of guy that Sean Payton wants, is just a guy who could distribute the football. It's J.J. McCarthy.
He's going to do exactly what he asks him to do.
Exactly. And I honestly debated, because I don't know how this mock draft's playing out here. If J.J. McCarthy goes in the top 10, I'm debating picking Bo Nix here. And I'm trading back and picking Bo Nix. Like, that's how, because they need a quarterback that bad. Like,
no doubt.
So I just see them doing something. Yeah, I would have saw them doing something desperate. They don't have to do it in this case. At 12th overall, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy goes to the Broncos. I just cannot see them passing up that opportunity.
All right, and now Vegas being right there after is an interesting spot, because I think they'd consider taking J.J. McCarthy there if he fell as well. Mm-hmm. I don't love the idea of trading up for Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I think I see them as late first rounders at best. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more of like a Will Levis scenario, early second round.
Yep.
So maybe the Raiders trade back. I don't know. Not going to do that here. They've got plenty of other needs. I've got tackle and corners. They're two next biggest needs, and there is a surplus of corners and tackles at this spot in the draft. Mm-hmm. Offensive tackle is one of the most premier positions in the NFL. It's the second, if not the third, most important position besides quarterback and edge rusher. It's those three for sure at the top. So I'm going to secure one of the anchors for whoever the potential future quarterback is for the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm going to take Troy Fontenot from Washington. He's my favorite tackle out of the group that's remaining.
Wow.
So that's where I'm going to go for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Very interesting. Okay, let's see it. I think that is a big need, too. It's a big one. All right, so now we got the Saints. I'm looking at the board now, and I'm honestly shocked this guy fell this far. If I'm the Saints, I'm sprinting to the podium on this one. I'm picking Jared Verse from Florida State. I kind of wanted to pick him at 11 with the Cardinals. I kind of wish that I did, but I don't know. It's something just lined up for me at that moment, so I'm going Jared Verse. I think that's a great fit for the Saints, and I think they at a position they could really need.
All right. With Dallas Turner going the pick before where Chicago was originally slated to pick, number 9.
That one hurts.
And then Jared Verse going before this pick, I'm not going to wait any longer to address their next biggest need besides quarterback, which is the edge rusher position.
I didn't even think about that.
And I'm going to take Liatu Latu.
Solid pick. That's
one of the most productive edge rushers in the country the last couple of years. I think he's a no-brainer as the third choice here in the first round.
Like that. A lot of people have him ranked higher, too, so it really depends on just where.
Yeah, and some people have him number 1, so, this could be a home run here for the Chicago Bears after trading down.
For sure. Okay, so we got the Seahawks at 16. There's one guy right now who's jumping out to me. And look, they drafted pretty offensive line heavy. I think maybe not this most recent draft, but the year before. They got Charles Cross, and they got another guy later in the draft. So the tackles are good, but that interior of that offensive line's a mess. And for that reason, I'm going with the guy who I had over the guy from Washington. I can't say his name, or I can't think of his name. But Talise Fuaga from Oregon State. Versatile guy, could play at guard. And, I mean, who knows, wherever they want to move him. But I'm going Fuaga at 16 for the Seahawks.
Good fit. Keep him in the Pacific Northwest.
Exactly. The team's going to want to run a lot, too. That's their bread and butter. I'm sticking with that.
All right. See, now this is where it gets interesting, because I'm going to do something that it's going to hurt me to do, because this is a player that I'm sure is going to be on the Packers list.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot of Packer fans will be upset to hear that this is where he's going to go. But defensive back is a big need for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mm-hmm. They're looking to be versatile. They just signed the ex-Packer Darnell Savage, who's going to give them some versatility there. The safety, nickel, and corner, he can kind of play all over. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go in a similar vein, Cooper DeJean.
Wow, I love that.
I know that a lot of people, love him as the number one corner. A lot of people say he's not good enough to play corner and is a better fit for safety in the NFL.
Yep.
Guess what? They can do whatever they want. He's also a great punt returner. He's
Yeah.
going to be a versatile guy for a team that's trying to build a championship roster, and it's great to be able to have that ability to plug and play.
This is another team in the Bengals at 18 where I feel like there's options on both ends. I really, I was debating between offensive tackle and defensive tackle. They need to beef up the interior of that defense, and I feel like tackles, when you got a quarterback who's had a couple injuries now, can never be a bad thing there.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to go D tackle, however, with probably one of the more underrated players in this draft, in Jerzon Newton from Illinois. So I'm taking him at 18.
I had a feeling that was the direction you were going to go there.
Yep.
It felt natural, especially with the top two defensive tackle picks there, both at your disposal.
Just sitting there. So that's kind of what I saw, and I feel like it was a good landing spot.
You like to keep these guys in their geographic regions, huh? You kept the
Yeah, I
tackle from
guess
Oregon
so.
State in the Pacific Northwest. He's staying in the Midwest.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny how that works out though, without even trying.
All right. Again, I'm not going to complicate things. Maybe this is even going to sound basic with the departure of Aaron Donald. But like you said, it's a blank canvas, and they need help in a bunch of different places, especially across that defensive line. We just talked about the top two interior defensive linemen on most boards being available, so I'm going to go Byron Murphy the second out of Texas.
Love that. It is funny too, because I feel like it happens, in the draft, right? Like in real life, where like sometimes positions just go on a run. And I mean, we haven't had like crazy runs, but we had a couple like back-to-back D tackle. We had back-to-back edges not too long ago with Jared Verse and Laitu Latu. So yeah, I like that too. I think that's another instant fill that gap right away. And I mean, the defense for the Rams needs a lot of work through and through. I've brought this guy up before for my Steelers pick at 20. I've kind of been chomping at the bit, ready to draft him. And I think it's a pretty big need. I'm going Brian Thomas, wide receiver from LSU, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, George Pickens is the number one. I think he's more of a number two. Come at me, if you will, Steelers fans. I think he's a little overrated. I think Brian Thomas is the fact that he's the number two receiver for LSU is crazy, because he is so talented, so fast. Just great after the catch. I think he'd be very, very good in this Steelers offense if the quarterback position is competent, which is a question mark. But
It is. But look, I mean, it's hopefully creating a great opportunity for your quarterback of right now and your quarterback of the future.
Yep.
And maybe LSU does it again with their dynamic wide receiver duos.
Yeah.
Miami is obviously hoping for another year at Super Bowl contention. That's I imagine the goal is to continue to build on the success that they've had the last couple of years. They need to bolster that offensive line to support Tua, assuming he's going to be there for the foreseeable future, and kind of retool this offense that lost some pieces in the offseason. So I think the biggest concern for them is the interior of that offensive line. I'm going to go with a guy, Graham Barton from Duke, who's versatile, can play center, can play guard, and can kind of be moved around to plug in wherever they need him.
Okay. All right, so we got the Eagles now at 22. I think the biggest need that we saw from the Eagles, just watching them last year, it was in the secondary. I feel like, Bradbury's taking a step back. I don't know how much longer Darius Slay is going to be there. I think they're going corner, and if I'm looking, this is another one where I'm kind of like salivating, sprinting to the podium. Nate Wiggins.
I knew you were going to do that, and I knew that was going to be frustrating for me.
Love Nate Wiggins. And I hate that he's going to the Eagles, but I think it's just such a perfect spot for him. Oh, do I technically go again now since we have the Cardinals?
You get 3 picks in a row here.
Wow,
again.
and I've been like running away with this thing, man. All right, so we got the Cardinals again. I gotta revisit here. We got Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback, with our first pick. I think we go receiver here. I think they go with the next best receiver. Again, such a deep wide receiver class this year. Like, there's so many of these guys that I like. And I'm going to go with Adonai Mitchell from Texas. I think he gives them a body on offense at least, because right now that receiver room's looking grim. And that kind of foils the Cowboys. They could have had a little marriage. So I was questioning wide receiver for them too at 24. However, they will not get the Texas reunion here. Let me sit on this for a second. With the Cowboys pick, I'm going to go with Amarius Mims from Georgia. They did go tackle last year with Tyler Smith, I think it was his name. I could be wrong on that, but I think they drafted someone last year pretty early. But I think offensive line was clearly taking a step back. And look, Dallas, they've always been known for their offensive line. And I feel like they're going to want to retool that. And, again, deep receiver class, they could probably get a guy in the second round too if they wanted to. And all of a sudden, here we are at the Packers.
Now, this is where it gets interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You may have just made my decision a little bit easier because Amarius Mims was 100% in contention here.
Really?
He's a freak athlete. He's a big body as well.
I saw you made a face and I said it. I was picking him.
He fits the stereotypical RAS score thresholds for the Packers and things like that, depending on how much weight you put into that. Mm-hmm. And Nate Wiggins, a couple picks before, really threw me off as well because he fits in that RAS score threshold as well.
I know.
So this is where I get screwed up. I think the biggest needs for the Packers are safety and linebacker, neither of which I want to take. Sorry, inside linebacker and safety, neither of which I want to take here. So I'm kind of just going with, okay, what are my secondary needs, and who's kind of the best player available?
Yep.
Now, you asked me last week. This is Kool-Aid McKinstry. That's who I'm taking here.
Wow.
I still think it's a very strong possibility that they do, and they go against their typical super young, high-scoring rash threshold, like insane athletes we can clean up the technique things later. However, I'm going to go stereotypical here and go with his teammate, Terrion Arnold.
Wow, I like that. He was staring me in the face, too. So I thought you were saying that you were getting McKinstry. So I'm like, wow, over Arnold, but I like that.
I'm going to switch up where I've been feeling. His athleticism is off the charts.
Crazy RAS score,
He's
too.
only 21 years old, which is another big thing for the Packers when they take these first rounders.
Yep.
He's from the SEC, which they've done a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, taking like 4 guys from Georgia and some other Power 5 schools. So I think he fits the mold here well. I will say I could see them trading down very easily. This to me feels like Eric Stokes 2.0. He's long, he's athletic. Big playmaker, can overcommit a little bit, but I think
you hope you could coach that stuff up too.
Right, and hopefully Eric Stokes gets healthy, and hopefully he's not as injury prone. So we shall see.
Okay, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pick at 26, I'm going to go with a guy that I personally love, not just because of his name, but I think it fills a big need. That interior of the offensive line for the Bucs has just been decimated. I'm going to go Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon.
As soon as you said I love his name, I knew exactly who you were going to take.
I'm going with Powers Johnson. First center off the board. And usually this is like, if you have that top tier center, this is usually where they come off as like late first round. And I think it's a big need. So, if I'm not mistaken, we have another Cardinals pick here. I think this is yours, though. I think this is the one they already had.
This is the one they already had, and it is my pick.
And if we scroll back while you're looking at whoever you plan on drafting here, Quinyon Mitchell was taken with the 11th pick, traded with the Vikings. And then the other Vikings pick was for Adonai Mitchell. So you got receiver and corner already. This is a heck of a draft for the Cardinals, too. I must say.
Drop back, reloaded. That roster needed a lot of work.
Yep.
Could one of those top receivers have helped them? Sure.
Yep. But you still get a solid one. Like I said, it's just how rich this class is. You can afford to trade back if you need to.
Well, based on the needs that have already been addressed in this draft at wide receiver and defensive back, I'm not going to go in either of those directions here. I'm not going to double dip.
Probably for the best.
Now, my next highest team need for them is interior offensive line. It's not really a great spot here with the top 2 interior offensive linemen already off the board. And there's kind of a gap here in expectation, and I don't think highly enough of any of the other guys to kind of reach here for them. Now, this could be another trade back opportunity for them as well if they wanted to continue to build some of those later round picks.
True, and you could get a team late quarter,
Somebody who's
early second round team
exactly
wants to get a quarterback here.
Exactly. I could see somebody coming up here to take a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, to make sure that they get their guy before day 2.
Yep.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. We won't complicate things here.
Cardinals have been active enough.
Exactly. I think I'm going to go with a little bit more of the best player available mentality, and I'm going to take Chop Robinson from Penn State.
2 great names back to back, I might add.
Absolutely. And like we said before, it's one of the top 3 premium positions in the NFL.
Yep.
You can't go wrong with too many of those. I know they have B.J. Ojolari and Zaven Collins, but like we said, throw another one in the mix, and maybe you've got one of the more disruptive defensive lines in the NFL.
Yep. I also think that it's a position that they could use some help at. I mean,
right. Those 2 that I named are not, Pro Bowlers.
Yeah.
But I think the more you add depth, and you can try to build towards what the Philadelphia Eagles have, where you have guys who are just constantly going in and out.
Yep.
You can't have too many.
Exactly.
Especially with a defensive-minded head coach.
Exactly. I think this pick for the Buffalo Bills is pretty, easy to make in my eyes. I really can't see them going any other position but wide receiver. Again, this top of the first, the end of the first round, top of the second round, just there's so many good receivers there. It's just a matter of who they take. I'm kind of torn between 2, but I have a personal preference in this regard. I'm going Keon Coleman from Florida State. I think he's a beast, and I think he instantly elevates that wide receiver room for Buffalo, which right now with Mac Hollins and Khalil Shakir as your wide receivers 1 and 2, I feel like you really, really need one now.
Yeah, and I think I like Xavier Worthy on a team where you can kind of fit him in and you get a nice accent player.
Yeah.
Obviously, his 40 time shot him up the draft board.
For sure.
I think Keon Coleman has been a little bit more consistently in this area of the board, and I think he's got a little more of that stereotypical playmaking wide receiver build.
And that's kind of my mentality too. I think there's a lot more just overall talented wide receivers, or well-rounded wide receivers is the word I was looking for in this area. I think Worthy could very well get himself drafted in the first round. We saw John Ross skyrocket because of a 40 time, but I don't know. Maybe NFL teams might have learned their lesson from it. Maybe one team says to hell with it, and one of these guys like a Keon Coleman gets swapped out instead. But I guess we'll see what actually happens on draft night.
Right. This is a team looking for a new number 1.
Yep. And I think a guy like that gives you the better chance of a more well-rounded guy.
I agree with that. Make sure I select him. All right, second to last pick. Oh, I forgot about what I did in the last time, which maybe I'll do. Ooh, I could go either direction here. Ooh, I'm not going to do what I did the last time, even though I want to. Okay. I'm ready. All right, in some of my preparation pre-mock drafts, I had the Lions going in a different direction here and taking Troy Franklin, who I think is a very nice complement to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. Hey, again, similar to Keon Coleman, is a little bit more of that stereotypical build, whereas Jamison Williams is going to beat you down the field vertically, and Amon-Ra St. Brown does his thing in the slot. Mm-hmm. I think that would be awesome for their offense, but I think they've got a bigger glaring need at defensive back. They've brought in some older guys like Carlton Davis and some others as well, but I think Kool-Aid McKinstry fits in here and his opportunity to be a playmaker in that secondary.
I like that too. And I feel like corner is definitely a need. I mean, like you said, they got Carlton Davis, but like you said, you can never use too many corners.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've really hit a string of wide receiver needy teams at this portion of the draft as we're wrapping this thing up. I think the Ravens are another team that could do it. and I love Troy Franklin. But even though I just kind of poo-pooed him on the last pick, I think I like Xavier Worthy here. I feel like just the speed of that offense, with Lamar Jackson, you get you get a piece like him who could just fly, and you still got a Mark Andrews and a Zay Flowers underneath, who's more of like a slot, short-range receiver. I think that could be interesting. So I think he could really take the top off of the, just be that downfield threat that offense could really use. So I'm going to go Xavier Worthy. There's definitely other directions that this team could go. I mean, they could go try to beef up the offensive line a little more, go back on the defensive side and, re-bolster some of the defensive linemen they lost in free agency. But I just like I can't shy away from this just collection of wide receivers in this area.
All right, and for the San Francisco 49ers, who seemingly have few weaknesses on the offensive side of the football, not that their defensive side has any weaknesses either, as you look at their roster. It's fun as you kind of look at these rosters to evaluate team needs. As you get closer to this end, you're like, oh, okay, you can see why some of these teams are making it deeper and deeper into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And even though this is maybe their number one need in my eyes, it's certainly not as big of a need as this position on other teams. So it's interesting how that all flushes out. But I'm going to go with a guy that's maybe fallen a little bit here through no fault of his own, just the way that the board kind of crumbles. And
as it happens in real life as well.
Exactly. I'm going to go J.C. Latham from Alabama here.
I like
going to
that
bolster that offensive line. It's an older offensive line. The right tackle position still a little bit up in the air. Obviously, Trent Williams on the other side, as long as he's healthy, is solid. But like I said, can't hurt as they continue to try to not only maintain the success they have now, but build for the future as well.
It's a great pick. See, I wanted to go a similar direction here, and I very well could. I need Tyler Guyton on the board here. Another guy who kind of fell, he was kind of projected in this area of the late first round. But I've seen him go even earlier. So, kind of wanted to go in that direction, especially with the departure of, who is it? Orlando Brown. But this is another team that I feel could really go receiver here. And especially with, I think if it wasn't for, some of the legal troubles that we've seen from Rashid Rice and, some of the, besides that, I mean, I don't really know who you have on that team. So I'm going to go Ladd McConkey from Georgia. I feel like he's a guy who they need to have sure hands, which he does. Fundamentally sound, great route runner, great hands, can rely on him. Because you're going to need a guy outside of Travis Kelce that could do that. Obviously, Rashid Rice, you hope can be that guy because he was for a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, beyond that, MVS's hands are 50-50 at best. I mean, you don't even want to put Kadarius Toney out in the field. And, yeah, I feel like they really, could use a number one or number two, assuming Rashid Rice comes back and stays out of trouble. So, that's it for our 2024 Decleated mock draft. Our first of its kind.
Pretty wild.
I know.
It's going to be very cool to look back in this and see where we ended up. Well, I'm sure we'll post on our socials with the results and things like that.
Sure.
So that maybe you can kind of follow along as you're listening. I know it's difficult to do mock draft audibly, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And we had some good mix-ups. We had some good trades. I think a good balance. Not too many, not too few.
No, I didn't want to just... Because it's very unrealistic to just be like, oh, no one's making any trades this draft.
Right.
Like, there's probably be more.
I'm sure, especially towards the later half that we kind of gave up on.
I know. It was just like so much effort off recording or off the mic where we're, like, all right, like, how, like, what makes the most sense? Like, are we giving too much? Like,
right, trying to get appropriate trade value. And,
looking at past trades, see what the value usually is in certain spots of the first round, stuff like that.
Right, and then you've got the three teams on the outside looking in in the second round who don't have a first round pick who might look to come in.
Exactly, and like we talked about for that Cardinals pick too, that 27, where they don't necessarily need to take this guy, and they could trade back, and I could very well see a team like the Raiders or even the Giants who missed out on a quarterback, at the top of the draft and could, benefit from like you said, taking a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix at that spot.
Right,
So,
and coming in up into the first round to say, let me go guarantee that I'm going to get my guy. Yeah, I like that idea too, actually, as a not a Giant fan, but a Giant fan adjacent.
yes, yes. Honestly, I think the biggest shock to me in the draft was the trade up from the Colts for Brock Bowers. I absolutely love that scenario, but I was not expecting that at all. I was so ready to take him for the Jets pick at 10.
I wasn't expecting it either. I think that's my number one moment of this draft. I think it came together so naturally. It worked out well.
Yep.
It's a good fit.
I think both of the trades were like awesome. Like I love the way that the Cardinals draft played out. They ended up having what 3 picks in the first round.
Yeah.
They get a number 1 corner in Quinyon Mitchell. They get a number 1 wide receiver at 23.
Right.
And Adonai
potentially a number 1 edge rusher on their team as well
exactly.
at 27.
So
that's honestly one of my favorite drafts.
That's a haul.
I will say, as much as it pains me to say, I think, assuming Caleb Williams is the guy that everybody thinks he's going to be, the Bears had a good draft.
Yep.
They were able to bolster some of their day 2 and day 3 picks as well with that.
I think it just stinks for the Bears that they missed out on both Verse and Dallas Turner. But like you said, Laitu Latu is still a solid pick at that spot. And then, yeah, I don't know. I really went wide receiver happy with a lot of my teams, especially at the end. But yeah, these are all spots that I could see. Like I said, I just love this wide receiver class.
And it's cool, too, because I feel like as I'm looking back especially, I felt this way during, but even looking back now, too, I never felt like I was like, ooh, I really wish, I never felt like I was forced to take a player. Like, I felt like everybody we took was a good fit, and I could see them really working well.
Realistically taking this player.
Right.
But I guess in terms of our teams in this mock draft, obviously the way that the first 5 picks played out was like horrific to see as a Giants fan, but I'm not upset walking away with the number 1 wide receiver in Roma Dunze.
Mm-hmm.
It's really between him and Neighbors at that spot, assuming, those top 3 quarterbacks are gone anyway. And like I said, my thoughts on McCarthy, so I'm not as sold on taking him at 6, which is a possibility. But I think that's a really good pick especially with who's there. And Terrion Arnold at 25, Loki could be a steal. And he fits that build, like you said, of the RASP score.
And you know what's funny about that, too? He fits the mold and the history of no one's really mocking him to the Packers.
Yeah.
Because almost all of the Packers picks from the past handful of drafts have been relative surprises. I'm sure there were people, especially who get really in the nitty gritty of the Packers and things like that, who had Quay Walker and Eric Stokes as possibilities at the end of the first round. But
yep.
I think for the most part, in terms of especially the consensus guys and the big networks, those were relative surprises to a lot of people and the general public. So I think this could fit that mold as well.
It could. Yeah, so that's it. I'm really curious to line this up with whatever the results of the first round are in the draft this week. So I'm super excited. I'm so happy that we were able to do this, and I think it really went well.
It makes me even more excited about Thursday night too, because now I'm just going to be wondering, okay, how many of these do we get right? Do we predict any of the trades right?
Yep.
Following along is going to be that much more fun now that you've got kind of a vested interest in it.
Exactly.
I think that's more or less it for this inaugural mock draft episode of Decleated.
Yeah.
We're very excited to continue to bring off-season episodes. The next couple of months here, we'll do a post-draft recap, I'm sure. Maybe we'll do different episodes. Maybe we'll be combined. I'm not sure. We'll have to do a Packers and Giants-centric focus and maybe some other general thoughts across the league as well. And then we'll, hop back into free agency and training camp and OTAs and all that stuff that's going to be coming down the pike here as we come into the summer months.
100%. I feel like this is when the excitement really starts to build again for next year. You get that little lull. Free agency is a nice little, 3-day stretch where it's super exciting. I mean, once you get the draft, now you know what your roster is going to be. You get a handful of new players coming in all the excitement about them, the rookie mini camp, and it just skyrockets from there.
It's the best time of year too, because the combine gives you false hope, and you're like, "Oh, football season's right around the corner," and then it's, "Oh wait, it's a month until the draft,"
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
but the draft is perfect because everybody's in their ideal form. All these rookies are going to plug your hole exactly how you want it to be filled, and you've got this team need, and we drafted a tackle and a receiver. Oh, we're great now. Nobody's like, well, he's going to only be a 65 overall, and he's going to partially
Yeah.
It's the best case scenario for everybody that you draft. It's so fun.
I'm also just like so ready for it because right after the season ends, like right after the Super Bowl, the draft order's set. So then you can start mocking more accurately with who's picking what at what spot. Combine happens, there you go. But then you got a month, and there's only so many mock drafts you can make that are different. And have all these crazy scenarios, and you get those some of the crazy like Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison, and can JJ McCarthy be the third quarterback taken instead of the four, or stuff like that, which it could happen.
Sure.
I wouldn't know, but I think it's crazy personally. So it's just all these things that it's I just want to know what happens already. I just want to know, and we are knocking on the door right now. But, I know we tried to wrap it up 5 minutes ago, but it's just so hard to stop talking
It is.
about
It's
this
an
stuff.
exciting time.
It really is. But thank you if you stuck around for all 32 picks of the first round. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys did as well. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your Decleated news, whether that's Instagram, X, TikTok, and we're planning on posting to YouTube soon. Hopefully we get this up there. And we'll see you next time.